Should you buy Bitcoin with a home equity line of credit? HELOC, HELOC. The general answer is no, but there is one caveat that I'll throw out there in case it applies, which I think is interesting. So a home equity line of credit is when you borrow against the equity in your home to do something. Maybe it's a repair on your home, maybe it's an emergency medical bill, maybe it's whatever. You've got equity in your house and you can borrow against that equity the bank will let you borrow against that equity to take out a loan. Of course, if you can't pay back the loan, I think they repossess your house. I don't know how that works, but I think that's what happens is if you can't make the loan, because the house is collateral, you effectively give up your house because you can't make the loan. So obviously any sort of debt is dangerous because whatever the collateral is, you could lose. So if you borrow against Bitcoin to buy more Bitcoin and you get liquidated, you lose some Bitcoin. If you borrow against your house and you can't make the payments and you get foreclosed, well, you lose your house. That's the way loans work. Whatever you put up as collateral for the loan, which is what gives whoever's lending you money safety to know that they're not going to lose their money, they are only loaning you money because there's a recourse if you don't pay it back. And the recourse is whatever it is you used as collateral, they get to keep, which is why, loans are dangerous. Okay, so generally if somebody called me regardless of the price of Bitcoin and said, I'm considering taking out a home equity line of credit to buy Bitcoin, I would say, no, don't do that. Do not do that. Now, there is, some interesting caveats. For example, I was talking to somebody recently and they said, look, the bank is not letting me, take out the amount of money I want to take out for a home repair. The minimum the bank is requiring to take out is more than the amount I think I'll need for a home repair. And what should I do with the extra money? Because the bank is requiring me to take it out. I don't know, after, whatever, 6 months, I could just, use it to pay back some of the HELOC, or I could buy Bitcoin with it. So my answer with that was, well, look, if you have to have a HELOC and you're going to do it anyway for a home repair, and if the bank is requiring you to take out more than you need, and if you have to do something with that extra money, is Bitcoin a good place to put it? My answer would be yes. If I were in that situation and I had a HELOC anyway, and the loan terms were something I was going to have to pay off a very long time in the future, and my options were pay down some of the HELOC or buy Bitcoin, at these prices, I would buy Bitcoin. Now, I would never take out a new HELOC to buy Bitcoin, but if I was going to have one anyway, and if the bank wouldn't let me have one as small as I needed for repairs, and if I had that extra money regardless, and if I needed to do something with it, then yeah, I would buy Bitcoin. But again, that is a very narrow situation that probably applies to almost nobody. Now, another question is, if you have capital laying around, whether it's from leftover capital from a HELOC, which is more than you needed because the bank required you to take out more than you needed. So if that is the case, you have more capital laying around than you need, or you have capital that you have laying around that you're going to need within the next 6 months. The question is, should you keep that in Bitcoin? And the answer is, of course, it depends on the price of Bitcoin and it depends on your risk tolerance. At $82,000 Bitcoin, I would say, I don't know, for money I knew I was going to need in the next 6 months, it depends on your risk tolerance. If you're okay being down another, 25% on that money, which is unlikely but not impossible, then sure. But if you're like, no, I really, really, really need to not be down a meaningful amount of that money, I would say, well, then you're stuck. You're stuck because if, you need X amount of money and it can only be down 10%, then I would say, well, 82,000, it's pretty easy for Bitcoin to be down another 10%. It may not be likely, but it's not unlikely. So at that point, I would say if somebody said, okay, I have leftover capital, that I know I'm going to need in 6 months, do I buy Bitcoin now? Or do I, sit in US dollar cash? I would probably say, sit in US dollar cash until the Bitcoin price is cheaper. Wait until James Check, my favorite analyst, says, hey, we probably are at the bottom. Like all the indicators say we're at the bottom. If James Check is saying that all the indicators indicate that we're at the bottom, we probably are. Now, if it goes lower, it's probably not going to go much lower. And the main risk with that approach is that we never hit the point at which all the indicators say that, we're at the bottom. So the high likelihood in that scenario is you're like, okay, here's money I need in 6 months. When James Check says we're at the bottom, I'll stick it in Bitcoin. the bottom indicators are never hit. The price just goes straight up, and you're stuck sitting on US dollars that you wish were Bitcoin. Well, that's just the risk you take, because nobody knows where the bottom is. Nobody knows where the top is. And James Check is a better weather forecaster of the future of Bitcoin than anyone else, but he's not always right. He's likely to miss bottoms. He's likely to miss tops. In the most recent case, all of his indicators said 126,000 was not the top of the current price cycle. Well, guess what? It appears it kind of was, unless we just shoot straight up from here and make 126 look like an irrelevant rounding error. Then people are going to look back and say, hey, he missed that. 126 kind of was the top, at least temporarily. So anyway, the same is likely to happen on the bottom, where, you're waiting around for him to say this is the bottom, and then by the time he says that was the bottom, the price has gone up and you've missed it. But again, if you have to have money in the next 6 months, you're stuck because there's not a good alternative. It's just too risky to buy $82,000 Bitcoin. In my opinion, it's too risky to buy $82,000 Bitcoin with money you're going to need 6 months from now, unless you have a high risk tolerance and you can afford being down 25% on that money. Now, for me, I would keep it in Bitcoin because, again, I can afford being down 25% on money I'm going to need in 6 months because I have other money in Bitcoin that, there's no chance that the Bitcoin price is going to drop below the cheapest Bitcoin I ever bought, or even the average of the price of the Bitcoin I bought. So I'm fine riding the ups and downs and the volatility because, again, it's like, you win some, you lose some, but you win with Bitcoin, you win way more than you lose. And therefore, I'm completely comfortable with the paradigm where, I lose money, but, I lose money on upside I was trying to get, but ultimately, in the grand scheme, I'm better off. Just like with the $10,000 of Bitcoin I bought last night at 82,000 with a Bitcoin-backed loan. It's a 1-year loan term, which means if Bitcoin's not above 82,000 in 1 year, plus the interest, I lose money. But again, I'm comfortable doing that because $10,000 is a very small portion of my Bitcoin, and it's an amount I'm willing to take risk with, and it's an amount that even if I do get liquidated and I lose some of my collateral, I'm okay with that, even though the liquidation levels are so low that I really don't think we're going to go there. So anyway, generally, home equity line of credit, I do not ever recommend somebody taking out new debt to buy Bitcoin. But if you have to take out debt and the money has to go somewhere, at the right price, Bitcoin is a great place to store value. And again, if I were in that situation, I would put the remainder of the amount I had to take out from the minimum, bank requirement, I would put that in Bitcoin. And for now, whatever I knew I was going to need of whatever amount I was hoping to take out from the bank before they made me take out more than I wanted, if I was in that situation, which I'm not, but if I was, then I would put the part I didn't need for the long term in Bitcoin, and I would wait around with the rest of it to see how low price of Bitcoin goes. And look, if the price drops to $70,000 and you don't need the money for 6 months, I would say, yeah, at $70,000, I'd probably just stick it in Bitcoin and hope for the best. But at 82, I would buy Bitcoin with any money I possibly had, but not newly borrowed money, that I knew I was going to need within 6 months. If I had newly borrowed money that I borrowed to do something in less than 6 months, I would not put that in Bitcoin at 82,000 because, again, A, it's borrowed money, and B, you're going to need it. And the worst money to put in Bitcoin is money that meets two criteria. One, it's borrowed money, and two, it's you're going to need it money. So anything that meets the, it's borrowed money and you're going to need it money, you really have to be buying radically discounted Bitcoin for that sort of 2x the risk. Because look, borrowed money is risky. Putting money in Bitcoin that you're going to need in the next 6 months is also risky. So if you're doubling up that risk, 2x the risk, 2 times 2 is 4. It's like quadruple the risk, something like that. Because when you start stacking risk, it doesn't go up linearly. It's not like one risk plus another risk is 2 risks. It's like, no, it's really exponential. It's like 1 risk plus 1 risk is like 4x. It just grows exponentially. If you added another risk on top of that, such as the money came from a Bitcoin-backed loan, not a home equity line of credit or something like that, I'm like, okay, now you're like 9x the risk because it just grows exponentially. But anyway, hopefully that's helpful in giving just a framework of what I would and wouldn't do in certain situations. And as always, ask me any questions. I love being helpful, and I'm here for anything you need. Thanks.